Have you ever noticed that sometimes trying to be understood is the most subtle way of giving up? Rumi wrote, "Be who you are, not who the world wants you to be." How many times have you felt the need to justify every single choice you've made? How many times have you had to transform your truth into something digestible, just to avoid causing offense? With each forced explanation, the soul falls a little quieter. You begin to trade away your essence in exchange for crumbs of acceptance. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, but there comes a point when explanation ceases to be communication and becomes submission. Can you feel it? You try to speak, and you don't feel heard. He tries to be honest, and gets questioned. Try being yourself, and you get corrected. It is in this silent cycle that the unseen pain of the soul is born. Rumi said, "Don't hide behind your mask. Your essence is more beautiful than any disguise." But even so, we still hide it. Because the world demands labels. The world demands logic. The world wants you to fit in, even if it means bending over 1,000 times. And then you start doing what you've always done. Explaining yourself. Explain why you feel so much. Because he loves too much. Why do you prefer silence? Why can't you follow the same path as everyone else? And without realizing it, each explanation is a rope that binds you. You'll get lost in words, trying to convince others of something that shouldn't even need defending, your own soul. But here's a truth that might hurt and set you free. No one who truly sees you needs an explanation. No one who feels your soul demands justifications. And no one who truly loves you asks you to change who you are. So why do we still try so hard? Why so much effort to prove your worth when true strength lies in simply being? Why this compulsion to explain yourself to those who have never listened to you with their heart? Maybe it's fear. Perhaps it's the old trauma of not being chosen. Perhaps it's just the old habit of shrinking oneself to fit into tight spaces. But there is a turning point. There is a moment, silent, yet powerful, when you choose to no longer justify yourself. And that's where, exactly where, everything changes. Because stopping the explanation, it's about declaring emotional independence. It's about setting invisible boundaries that scream, "My soul is no longer for sale." When you stop explaining yourself, you begin to inhabit a purer place. A place where silence becomes sacred. Where your presence speaks louder than any argument. Where your peace is worth more than the approval of others. And when that change happens, the world changes too. Not because he became kinder, but why did you stop asking for permission to exist? And what if the real reason you're still trying to explain yourself is it deeper than it seems? What if what binds you to this need is a wound you didn't even realize you were carrying? Let's talk about it, so before continuing, take a purposeful pause. Take a deep breath. Now tell me, honestly, do you also feel like you've spent too much time trying to explain yourself to people who never really listened to you? If so, I want you to comment below, "I choose my truth." Because just by writing this, something is already starting to change inside you. This space here is not just another video. It's an emotional refuge. It's a place where pain turns into poetry, and the soul finds mirrors. But for that to happen, you need to be present with an open heart. So if this message touched something inside you, leave a like. Not out of vanity, but because it shows that this type of content needs to continue to exist. Subscribe to the channel, because here, every video is a conversation with your most forgotten side. And ring the bell, because sometimes what you most need to hear arrives at the exact right moment, but only if you're nearby. Now then, let's go deeper, because what nobody told you about this need to explain yourself, that's what we're going to reveal from now on. Perhaps you've spent your life trying to be explained, accepted, justified. But what if the problem isn't you? What if it's the exhaustion of screaming silently inside? You've grown accustomed to this kind of pain. A pain that doesn't explode but consumes. That doesn't scream but weighs on your chest like an ancient stone. It's as if your soul has molded itself to the constant effort of trying to be understood and never truly heard. You learn to speak carefully, measure your words, soften the intensity of what you feel, all to avoid bothering anyone. And the more you do this, the more your truth gets lost amidst justifications that no one really asked for. The silence that remains afterward is the cruelest, because it's not the silence of peace. It's the silence of omission. The silence of a soul that has learned to hide so as not to be rejected. It's hard to admit this, but how many times have you explained yourself for loving too much? For feeling deeply? For not following the logic of the people around you? How many times have you found yourself trying to justify your tears, your withdrawal, your way of loving or protecting yourself? And deep down, do you know what hurts the most? It's not the judgment of others. It's the judgment you've learned to make of yourself. The internal criticism that repeats, "You're too much, you feel wrong, you should be different," as if there were something wrong with being who you are. But what if Rumi was right when he said, "You were born with wings. Why do you still crawl?" This phrase, however poetic it may seem, carries a frightening truth. Because if you were born to be whole, free, true, why do you still live trying to fit into places that demand you bend yourself into pieces? The answer, however painful it may be, often lies in the way you were taught to love. Perhaps you learned that to deserve love you had to explain yourself, be perfect, be understood, be accepted at any cost. And when love is conditional on explanation, performance, obedience, it ceases to be love. It becomes a negotiation, an emotional currency where you give too much and receive crumbs. The soul feels this. It knows when it's being sold in emotional installments. And even so, you continue, because you still have hope of one day being seen. But what if that hope is trapped in the wrong place? What if liberation isn't about being understood, but about stopping trying to be? There is a silent strength in simply remaining, in becoming a space where explanation is no longer necessary, where you no longer need to defend yourself, where your existence in itself is sacred. But this strength is not born of pride, nor of indifference. It is born of pain, the pain of having explained yourself so many times and still being misunderstood, the pain of having given yourself completely and still not being enough. It is this pain that begins to transform into courage, courage to be silent, courage to no longer justify what pulsates within you. And this is where everything starts to change, because suddenly you realize that true love, whether for yourself or for others, doesn't need to be explained. It's felt, it exists. And when you stop explaining yourself, you stop negotiating who you are. And at that exact moment, the world starts to react differently. The people who demanded justifications distance themselves. Those who truly see you come closer. And most importantly, you get closer to yourself. You begin to listen to yourself, to respect your limits, to understand that saying no without explaining is already an act of self-love, that distancing yourself without giving justifications can be a form of healing, that feeling something deeply without needing to translate it to others is perhaps the greatest level of spiritual freedom, because the soul understands what the ego insists on trying to explain. The soul doesn't need defenses, it only needs space to exist. This change isn't quick. It starts with small choices, like, for example, when you decide not to justify distancing yourself from someone who wasn't good for you, or when you feel sadness, and instead of blaming yourself for it, you simply feel it and embrace it, without needing to explain it to anyone, without needing to defend yourself. This is a break from the old cycle of emotional performance. It's an escape from the invisible prison of trying to please in order to be accepted. And it is here that Rumi whispers again silently, "Stop acting so small. You are the universe in ecstasy in disguise." Can you feel the power of these words? Because when you stop explaining yourself, you start to remember this. How much you already are, how much you already carry, how much you already know. And more than that, you begin to realize that the explanation, most of the time, is a desperate attempt to be loved by someone who isn't ready to love. And that's not your fault. It's just the reality of a world that hasn't yet learned to see the soul beyond appearances. But you are no longer in that place. You are here, now. Hearing these words is not by chance. You are here because the time has come to break with this pattern, to stop translating yourself to be understood, to stop asking for approval, to stop begging for acceptance, because the soul is tired. And when the soul is tired, it stops. It falls silent. And in that silence, something magical happens. You return to yourself, and believe me, it changes everything. The way you relate to others, what you tolerate, what you demand, what you allow, what you forgive. Even the way you look at yourself in the mirror begins to change, because the gaze is no longer one of judgment, but of reverence. You stop accusing yourself of feeling too much. You stop feeling ashamed for wanting depth. You begin to honor yourself, and that doesn't need explaining. So now, if anything here touched your soul, comment below. He writes, "I don't need to explain myself anymore." Or if you want something more intimate, write, "I choose to listen to myself before trying to be heard." These words are not just comments. They are declarations of healing. These are the marks of someone choosing to break free from the cycle of invisible pain and to begin living with an awakened soul. Do you feel you always need to justify your decisions, your feelings, your pain, as if living in peace with who you are bothers other people? This feeling is more common than you imagine, and yet it seems to isolate you, as if only you carry this invisible burden of always having to explain yourself. But the truth is, many people live with this same dilemma. The pain of being profound in a world that prefers shallowness. The pain of being a soul in an environment that demands performance, control, appearance. And this tires you. More than work, more than daily tasks, what really wears you down is this constant effort to mold yourself so as not to cause discomfort. You walk on eggshells, adjusting your tone of voice, your words, your gestures, because you know that if you are your whole self, someone will be bothered. And that hurts. Because deep down, all you wanted was the right to be yourself without having to explain so much. It's as if there's a silent demand, that you always smile, that you don't feel too much, that you don't show sadness, that you don't say no, that you calmly accept everything, that you justify even your absence, your silence, your pause. Have you noticed this? This pressure to constantly validate your own existence, as if living in peace with who you are, bothers people? Perhaps because your peace confronts the unresolved chaos of others. Perhaps because your sensitivity exposes what others have spent their entire lives avoiding feeling. And then you start to internalize this logic. You begin to believe that you really need to justify yourself. You start to doubt your own instincts. You start to wonder if you're wrong for feeling what you feel, for wanting what you want, for no longer accepting certain standards. And this subtly erodes your self-esteem. Every time you remain silent so as not to displease, every time you accept something that hurts your truth, every time you say everything's fine when inside everything is in pieces, it's an invisible problem because it doesn't have an apparent wound. It doesn't bleed to the eyes, but it bleeds inside. It bleeds in the tight chest, in the emotional exhaustion that doesn't go away, in the feeling of always being out of place. And the cruelest thing is that you don't really know when it started. Maybe it was way back when you realized that crying bothered your parents, or when you were rejected for being different, or when you loved and were ignored, or when they told you that you needed to be stronger, more rational, more well-behaved. These marks remain, and they create a pattern. You adapt, you explain yourself, you correct yourself, and over time, you get lost. But there comes a moment when the soul begins to awaken, when the discomfort of constantly conforming becomes greater than the fear of showing itself. It is at this moment that you begin to see the invisible problem for what it is, an emotional prison disguised as education, kindness, empathy, but which, in reality, is only silent submission, an obedience to the pain of others that no longer has space to occupy your soul, because your soul wants to be free, and it is asking for this through your weariness, your exhaustion, your sadness that comes without apparent reason. Rumi said, "Close your mouth, open your heart." Perhaps that's it. Perhaps you're trying to explain with words what can only be understood in silence. Perhaps your soul no longer needs to speak. It only needs to be felt. And more than that, respected. Because if there is a true way to honor who you are, it's to stop justifying your existence, to stop asking permission to feel, to desire, to change. Because you've already understood that your peace is non-negotiable, that your silence is sacred, that your pain is legitimate, that your way of seeing the world, even if misunderstood, is true. Yes, this will be unsettling. It will provoke those who still live according to external expectations. It will trigger discomfort in those who have never had the courage to be authentic. But it's not your responsibility to alleviate someone else's pain at the expense of your own. It's not your duty to remain silent to maintain harmony with others. Because every time you explain yourself unnecessarily, you give others the power to validate your soul. And no one should have that power. Because who you are doesn't need translation. Your essence is already whole. It's already enough. It's already worthy. You just need to remember this. And start little by little to break this cycle. Saying no without guilt. Being silent without fear. Feeling without apologizing. Choosing yourself without explaining yourself. Because this is the beginning of healing. The silent healing of the soul that has grown tired of bending. And when this healing begins, everything changes. You begin to realize that not everything needs to be said, that there is strength in silence, that there is wisdom in simply remaining, and that the right people will understand, not because you explained yourself, but because you allowed yourself to be. Now tell me, do you feel like you're constantly explaining your pain to people who never truly listen? Comment below, my soul doesn't need permission to exist. Or if you prefer something more direct, write, today, I choose to respect myself in silence. These sentences are not just words, they are declarations. They are breaks with old patterns. And each of your comments here becomes a symbol of collective healing. The need to explain oneself stems from the age-old fear of being rejected. It is the wounded child trying to prove with every gesture that they deserve love. With every word she pleads, see me. But what that child didn't yet know, and perhaps you're starting to realize now too, is that true love doesn't need to be earned through justifications. Because Rumi whispers, what you seek outside is already within. This phrase seems simple, but it carries a whole universe of truths that most of us spend our lives ignoring. What you seek outside, acceptance, validation, understanding, belonging, love, already resides within you. But the old wound, the one forgotten in the corner of your soul, taught you that you needed to prove your worth all the time. It created the illusion that you would only be worthy if you were understood. And then the cycle began. You explain yourself, justify yourself, adapt, and in the end, you continue to feel empty. Not because the other person didn't understand you, but because you didn't listen to yourself. This spiritual root of pain runs deep. It doesn't originate in the present. It sprouts from childhood. From the first time you cried and someone said it was an exaggeration. From the first time you expressed what you felt and were silenced. From the first time you tried to show who you really were and were rejected. These small emotional wounds accumulate, becoming a pattern. You grow up, but you remain that child inside, expecting to be loved if you're good, understood if you explain yourself properly, accepted if you don't bother anyone. And when the soul enters this cycle, it forgets itself. It disconnects from its own truth, and that's where the emptiness is born. An emptiness that you try to fill with the acceptance of others, with external recognition, with praise, approval, applause. But no matter how much you receive, the hole remains. Because what the inner child needs is not an audience. It needs acceptance. It needs to be seen by you. And this is where the spiritual turning point begins. Because the pain you feel when trying to explain yourself isn't about the present. It's the echo of an old pain. And as long as you keep trying to resolve with words what was born from emotional silence, you'll remain trapped in this cycle of frustration. Healing begins when you recognize this root, when you stop fighting for love and start remembering that you already are love. Rumi said, "You were created with wings. Why do you crawl through life?" And perhaps the answer lies in this. You've forgotten your power because you're trying to be small in order to be accepted. You're trying to fit into other people's molds so you won't be rejected. But no soul was made to be fitted into a box. The soul is expansion. It's truth. It's presence. And when you choose the soul, you begin to silence the ego. And the ego is precisely what demands an explanation. The ego says, explain to him why you changed. The ego screams, justify your withdrawal. The ego demands, tell me why you were sad. But the soul only observes. The soul feels. It doesn't need to convince. It doesn't need to defend itself. She knows that what is real doesn't need proof. And yet, we persist. We enter into relationships trying to be understood. We maintain friendships where we are only heard if we justify ourselves. We accept invitations to places where we need to explain our own energy, our own silence, our own choice not to be there. And this is exhausting. It drains your vital force that could be used for something greater, something sacred. Because every time you explain yourself to someone who isn't ready to listen, you abandon yourself a little more. And there comes a point when the soul screams from within, enough. That enough is enough is the beginning of transformation, because it doesn't come with anger. It comes with clarity. It's as if a fog begins to dissipate, as if you suddenly realize you don't need to anymore. You don't need to justify being sensitive. You don't need to explain why you cut off contact with that person. You don't need to apologize for choosing silence. You begin to understand that your energy is too precious to be wasted trying to convince others of something your soul already knows. And this process is profound. It doesn't happen overnight, because the fear of rejection is ancestral. It lives in the depths of the unconscious. It was inherited, repeated, nurtured for generations. Perhaps your mother felt it. Perhaps your father too. Perhaps no one in your lineage was truly allowed to feel, to be, to exist without guilt. But you are here. You are the breaking point, the link that breaks the cycle. Breaking this cycle requires courage. Courage to not respond to messages just to avoid seeming rude. Courage to not say everything's fine when it's not. Courage to leave groups, relationships, places where you need to wear a mask to be accepted. Courage to listen to yourself before trying to be understood. And that is spiritual. Deeply spiritual, because every time you choose your truth instead of the validation of others, you align yourself with your most sacred essence. And then what was pain begins to turn into wisdom. What was wound begins to turn into a portal, and you begin to remember that you didn't come here to please. You came to live, to feel, to love, to let your presence heal spaces where the noise of emotional performance no longer fits. And in that silence, you begin to hear your soul again. You begin to understand that there is no need for explanation where there is truth, and that the right hearts recognize each other without a word. If you felt this text spoke directly to your inner child, comment below, "I honor my soul before explaining myself." Or if you prefer something even more direct and intimate, write, "I acknowledge my wound, and I choose to heal in silence." These phrases are not just answers. They are declarations of awareness. They are seeds of a new way of living. A way more aligned with who you are, not with what others expect you to be. Over-explaining is a form of imprisonment. You try to be seen, but you gradually fall apart in the process. Every word spent trying to justify who you are, what you feel, why you distance yourself, why you come back, why you cry, why you remain silent, is a slice of your energy being ripped from your soul and given to someone who often doesn't even have the capacity to understand what you're trying to say. Explaining can seem like a way to connect, but in excess, it's an illusion. The illusion that if you are clear enough, the other person will finally understand you. And when that doesn't happen, because it almost never happens the way we expect, you get frustrated, you blame yourself, you diminish yourself, and the cycle repeats itself. This is the prison no one sees, because it doesn't have iron bars. It has emotional bars, invisible but real. You become trapped by them when you feel the need to justify your silence so as not to seem arrogant, when you feel the need to explain your no so as not to be seen as ungrateful, when you try to convince someone that your pain is legitimate, that your process is real, that your time is necessary. The soul grows ill in this place. The essence becomes a mere draft, and you begin to exist no longer for yourself, but for the expectations of others. And all of this has a name: ego. Because it is the ego that wants to explain. It is the ego that wants to be understood, applauded, accepted. It is the ego that despairs when it is not seen, when it is misinterpreted, when someone distorts its words, when someone walks away without warning. The ego panics in the face of rejection and then tries to save itself through justification. But the soul does not. The soul does not defend itself. The soul allows itself. It does not try to convince. It remains. The soul does not fight for understanding. It honors its truth, even if no one understands it. And this is where a lot of things start to make sense. Because you try to explain not because you want to, but because you're still trying to be accepted in a place where your soul doesn't fit. Because you still believe that if you speak correctly, if you justify yourself well, if you find the right words, the pain will lessen. But the pain of misunderstanding isn't relieved by explanation. It's only healed when you stop placing your peace in the hands of those who never knew what to do with it. And the most dangerous thing about all this is that, by constantly trying to explain yourself, you begin to doubt your own truth. You start to wonder if you're exaggerating, if you're being radical, if you're being too difficult. You internalize the logic that if the other person doesn't understand, the mistake is yours. But it's not always like that. Sometimes the other person doesn't have the depth to grasp the language of your soul, and it's not their fault, but it's also not your mission to descend to their level every time your truth bothers them. Explaining can be a gesture of empathy, but when it becomes constant, it becomes a burden. Because excessive explaining is a mechanism for emotional survival. It's a way of trying to maintain bonds that are already fragile. It's an attempt to postpone rejections that deep down have already happened. And this imprisons you, because you start living in the expectation that the other person will understand you so that, only then, you can allow yourself to be who you are. But what if you simply stopped? What if, in the middle of a difficult conversation, instead of justifying your pain, you simply said, "I'm sorry"? What if, instead of explaining why you need space, you said, "Because that's what I need"? What if, instead of justifying your absence, you calmly accepted, "I chose myself"? These small pauses are silent revolutions, because it is in them that you begin to reverse the flow. You stop trying to prove your worth. You stop begging for acceptance. You stop putting yourself in the dock of your own existence. Because yes, that's exactly what happens. Every time you explain yourself to someone who doesn't respect you, you judge yourself. You accuse yourself. You try to be acquitted by a jury that never had the capacity to understand you. The soul doesn't need that. The soul knows it didn't come to be absolved. It came to be lived, to be honored, to be felt. That's why it doesn't argue. It withdraws. It protects itself. And sometimes it even falls silent, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. Because there are silences that are more powerful than any justification. There are distances that speak louder than 1,000 words. There are boundaries that, when respected, say, "Here lives someone who has learned to choose themselves." And all of this requires a strength that can't be taught in books, a strength that is born from the depths of pain. Because the greatest liberation isn't being understood. The greatest liberation is no longer needing that. It's understanding that not everyone will understand you, and that's okay. That not everyone will like who you're becoming, and that's okay. That not everyone will applaud your healing, and that's okay. Because what matters in the end is the peace you feel when you stop forcing yourself to fit where your soul only wanted to breathe. And this peace is silent. It's discreet, but it transforms everything. Because it brings you back to yourself. And when you return to yourself, you realize that everything you were trying to prove with words already lived within you all along. You just needed to remember. If you felt that this part of the video reflected your own story, comment below, "My soul no longer needs to defend itself." Or if you want to open up even more, write, "I don't need to explain myself to be truthful." These words are more than just comments. They are turning points. Silent marks of those who are choosing to stop putting themselves in the defendant's seat and start living with soul. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop betraying yourself. You choose the soul, not the appearance. And everything, absolutely everything changes. These words are a silent invitation to transformation, because the moment you choose to stop justifying your existence, stop defending yourself, stop molding yourself so that others will accept you, is the moment you reconnect with what truly matters, your essence. And in doing so, you begin to break through all the layers of falsehood and masks that life, and the very fear of rejection, have placed upon you. For so long, you were conditioned to believe that to be loved, to be accepted, to be recognized, you needed to explain yourself, to justify yourself, to talk more, to argue, to constantly prove that your choices were right, that your emotions were legitimate, that your absence wasn't a lack of consideration, that your silence wasn't a sign of weakness. And when you weren't heard or understood, the blame seemed to fall on you. Perhaps you began to believe that you needed permission to exist, that your authenticity needed to be validated by someone. And when that didn't happen, you felt smaller, incomplete, lost. But what you didn't know, and perhaps are now beginning to understand, is that this relentless pursuit of others' approval not only exhausts you, but also distances you from who you truly are. In trying to fit in trying to explain yourself, you gradually lost yourself. And in doing so, you abandoned your own truth. Because the truth that isn't communicated with words but with presence, with stillness, with authentic action, was replaced by a persona molded to please, to fit in, to be accepted. When you decide to stop explaining yourself, There's a silent but profound break with that cycle. It's not about being indifferent to others or closing your heart. It's about choosing your own truth, without asking permission to be who you are. It's as if, by finally deciding to no longer justify yourself, you free yourself from an invisible weight that has always been there, pulling you down. You begin to understand that your peace is no longer in external acceptance. It's within you. It's yours. And when you choose to live this way, everything changes. The first step in this transformation is awareness. The awareness that you have a choice. A choice to no longer put your energy into trying to please, into trying to understand what others think, into trying to make them see you the way you think they should see you. You begin to realize that words are not what define you. The words you speak, the explanations you offer are not what determine your worth. What determines your worth is what is in your heart, your soul, your deepest being. When you choose to live this way, you begin to make space for what is real, for what is genuine. You begin to allow yourself to be you, without fear of being misunderstood, without fear of being judged. You stop looking at others and start looking inward, and what you find is something powerful, something pure, something that needs no explanation, because you begin to see yourself as the sole judge of your own life. No one else needs to understand your journey, because you have finally understood your own truth. This doesn't mean you'll isolate yourself or distance yourself from others. It means you'll connect with people who can truly see you. It means you'll choose relationships based on respect for your authenticity, where you don't need to explain yourself at every turn, where your choices are understood without you having to justify every decision. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop allowing the expectations of others to dominate your life. You begin to allow yourself to be imperfect, to be vulnerable, to be human, without the need to hide or change who you are for others to accept you. The greatest gift you can give yourself is to stop seeking external approval. When you stop explaining yourself, you allow yourself to live. You allow yourself to be happy, to make mistakes, to grow. You no longer need to hide behind words, behind justifications, behind what you think others expect of you. And that is liberating, because it is at that moment that you finally begin to live without the chains of fear, without the prison of doubt. You begin to experience what it is to live in peace with your own essence, with your own being. Ultimately, true change isn't about changing other people's behavior or getting them to see you differently. True change lies in changing how you see yourself. When you allow yourself to be, without explaining yourself, you begin to see yourself with new eyes. You begin to recognize your own worth, your own strength, your own light. And that, yes, is what will transform your life. Because when you connect with your own soul, there's no more room for doubt, for guilt, for frustration. What remains is the certainty that you are exactly where you should be. And that's the key. This key is yours, and only you can decide when to turn the lock. And when that happens, when you allow yourself to simply be, you will see that on the other side there is a world of possibilities. A world where you can be everything you are without fear of not being enough. Where you can express yourself, free yourself, find yourself, and that requires no further explanation, because the simple fact that you are who you are is already all you need to be. Now, if you also feel it's time to stop explaining yourself to others and start living your truth, comment below, "I am enough without explanations." Or, if you want something more personal and profound, write, "I choose my truth without justifications." These words are more than just a simple comment. They are declarations of a new beginning, a new way of living, where your soul is the only guide and your truth the only purpose. Perhaps you're in a relationship where you need to justify every feeling. Every emotion you express needs to be explained, discussed, repeated, as if your pain, your joy, your sadness were issues to be resolved by someone who doesn't truly understand what it means to be you. Do you feel this way? As if every word that comes out of your mouth is questioned, misinterpreted, minimized, as if your way of seeing the world is always wrong, excessive, too much? How many times have you felt devalued, as if your essence were a problem, something that needed to be contained, molded to fit an expectation that isn't yours? Or perhaps you're in a family where being yourself is a problem, where your choices are questioned, where what you feel isn't accepted or understood. Who you are simply doesn't fit in there. Maybe they love you, but their love comes with conditions. Love conditioned on behavior, on meeting expectations, on obeying standards that don't reflect your truth. And in this process, you mold yourself. You try to adjust, you explain yourself. You try to find a way of being that is acceptable to everyone around you, forgetting what really matters. You. Now, listen to me. You didn't come here to fit in. You didn't come here to be a piece fitted into a board that doesn't belong to you. You didn't come here to live according to the expectations of others, to be what others want you to be, to adapt to their vision of who you should be. You came here to remember who you are, and you deserve to live that with dignity, with respect, with self-love, because there is nothing more sacred than living according to your truth, according to what your soul truly desires. This process of adapting, of justifying yourself, of trying to make others understand your emotions and your choices is exhausting. And deep down, you know it. Because in the end, explanations are never enough. Even if you try hard, even if you try to explain every detail, every nuance of what's happening inside you, people who don't have the capacity to understand your depth will never understand. They will continue to look at you as an enigma, something to be deciphered, something to be corrected, something to be adjusted to better fit what they think is the right way to be. Do you realize how this diminishes you? How it makes you lose yourself? Because the moment you start justifying yourself, you begin to abandon your own truth. You start to believe that something is wrong with you, that your way of feeling, acting, and being needs to be corrected. And that's when you enter a vicious cycle of trial and error, of adapting to please, of molding yourself to be accepted, of explaining yourself to be understood, and in the end, you end up emptying yourself. You lose connection with your essence. And that's painful. That's an emotional burden you carry without realizing it until the moment you decide to stop. Stop explaining yourself. Stop justifying yourself. Stop trying to convince others that your truth is valid. Because deep down, you know you don't need that. Your truth doesn't need approval. Your truth doesn't need explaining. Your truth is yours, and that's what matters. Because authenticity, the true connection with who you are, doesn't come from the validation of others. It comes from within. It comes when you decide, with courage and clarity, that being who you are is enough. It doesn't matter if others don't understand. It doesn't matter if others don't accept it. What matters is that you are living according to your essence. And that is liberating. When you stop trying to fit your life into expectations that aren't yours, you begin to live with more lightness, with more peace, with more authenticity. Perhaps this won't happen overnight. Perhaps you need time to realize that you can live without the chains of others' approval. Perhaps for a while, you'll still feel bothered by the idea of not being understood. But I guarantee you, when you allow yourself to be yourself, the weight of explanations will begin to dissipate. You will begin to realize that your presence is enough. Your feelings are valid. Your pain is legitimate. And your truth, however difficult it may be for others to understand, is the only thing that needs to be respected. You came here to live according to your soul, not the expectations of the world. You no longer need to fit in. You no longer need to explain yourself. You just need to be. And in being, you will discover a freedom you never imagined possible. A freedom to live without fear of not being accepted, to live without the need to justify every step, every choice, every silence. Now, if this resonated with you in any way, if you're also allowing yourself to remember who you are, comment below, "I am worthy of my truth." Or if you feel you are beginning to understand that being yourself is enough, write, "I choose myself without explanations." These words are not just a reflection of how you feel right now. They are a mark of who you are becoming, someone who no longer needs to justify their existence, because it is already valid in itself. You no longer need to ask permission to exist. You've spent too much time trying to be what others expected. You've spent entire lives bending, molding, erasing yourself in the name of an acceptance that never came as you imagined. But today, something inside you begins to move in a different way. It's not anger, it's not revolt. It's a new kind of silent courage, a strength that arises the moment you tire of crawling, because you know deep down that you were born with wings. And Rumi, with his immortal wisdom, already warned, you were born with wings. Why do you still crawl? The answer to that question may not be simple, but it is profoundly spiritual. You crawled because you learned from an early age that taking up space bothered people, that being intense was too much, that showing vulnerability was weakness, that having your own opinion was disrespectful. You crawled because the world didn't know what to do with your greatness. And like every sensitive soul, you preferred to fit in rather than overflow. You preferred the safety of silence to the risk of authenticity. But now, perhaps for the first time, you're beginning to realize that continuing like this hurts more than the fear of change. That pain throbbing inside you isn't weakness. It's your soul crying out for freedom. It's life demanding its way in. It's the sacred within you begging to be lived, not hidden. And the turning point begins right here, when you allow yourself to hear this call without stifling it, when you decide, even with fear, to take a step towards your rawest truth. And this, however subtle it may seem, is the beginning of real spiritual empowerment, not the kind of empowerment with ready-made phrases, empty slogans, but an empowerment that comes from within, that is born from your rediscovery of who you always were, before you forgot yourself. Because that's what happens. We don't become different people when we wake up. We remember. We return. We untie the knots that bound us to distorted versions of ourselves and begin, little by little, to breathe at the frequency of our own soul. And that soul knows the way. It never forgot. It was you who, trying to please the world, distanced yourself from it. But it waited, with patience, with love, with that calm that only eternity carries. And now, she's calling you back. And it's not just any call. It's a call to fly, to abandon justifications, to leave behind endless explanations, to abandon apologies for being who you are. Because nobody, absolutely nobody, can live your life for you. And as long as you continue to place your existence in the hands of others' understanding, you will remain a prisoner of an emotional system that will never fully recognize you. But when you choose the soul, when you look inside and say, enough, something changes. You stop crawling. You rise. And even if your legs tremble, even if your voice falters, even if your heart races, you begin to fly. And this flight isn't about going far. It's about going deep. It's about returning within with such serene strength that no disapproving look can shake you. It's about inhabiting your own skin with such dignity that no judgmental word can hurt you. It's about belonging to yourself in such a complete way that solitude becomes an ally, that silence becomes a temple, that your presence becomes a prayer. And in that place, explanations lose their meaning. You no longer feel the need to prove anything. You're no longer in a hurry to be understood, because you finally understood. You understood that the only permission you needed was your own. You understood that living with soul is more important than pleasing with appearances. You understood that your sensitivity is a gift, not a flaw. You understood that your pain has a purpose, that your journey is sacred, that your existence, even on the days when it seems broken, still carries light. You begin to firmly honor your boundaries, no longer with guilt. You begin to tend to your wounds like someone tending a garden. You begin to see your story with more compassion and less judgment. Because now, where before there was only the need to be accepted, there is something new. Self-respect, self-love, self-awareness. And this is the point where the soul begins to blossom. Not because everything around you has changed, but because you finally chose to stop running away from yourself. And in doing so, you also begin to attract what previously seemed unattainable. The right people, true bonds, connections that don't demand performance, presences that don't require explanation. Because when you align with your soul, everything around you responds, and what doesn't respond moves away. But now, unlike before, you no longer suffer from this, because you understand that what moves away makes room for what truly belongs. You no longer need to live begging for emotional acceptance. You no longer need to exhaust yourself trying to explain your choices, your feelings, your silences. You are free, not a false freedom of social media, of cliches, but a freedom that begins from within, that overflows through your eyes, that is reflected in your actions, that manifests itself in the peace of someone who no longer needs to justify their existence. And if right now at this moment something within you has awakened, if you feel that your soul is even subtly remembering who it is, comment below, "My soul has authority." Or if you want to declare yourself even more truthfully, write, "I no longer ask for permission to exist." These words are not just answers. They are a seal, a reminder, a silent cry from someone who has decided to stop crawling and start flying. The silence of those who have stopped explaining themselves is the loudest sound of freedom. He doesn't harbor anger. It's not about indifference, it's presence. It's healing in the form of posture, a conscious choice, a new state of being. When you choose this silence, you are not giving up on yourself. On the contrary, you are for the first time honoring everything your soul has always wanted to say, but that the world never knew how to hear. This silence is not the same as the silence of fear or omission. It is the silence of return, the silence of truth, the silence that settles in when the soul finally realizes that it no longer needs to fight for space. It already is space. For a long time, perhaps you confused silence with weakness. You believed you needed to explain yourself to be respected, that you needed to argue to be heard, that you needed to defend yourself to be recognized. But now you realize, respect begins when you decide you will no longer beg for it. Recognition is built when you give yourself the right to be who you are, even if no one applauds. And your strongest voice is not what you say, it's what you allow yourself to silence with dignity. This silence, when born from consciousness, has an almost mystical power. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't justify itself. It doesn't provoke. It simply is. It communicates something that words could never translate. The soul is no longer negotiating with the world. She retreated to her sacred place, and there she heals. There she listens to herself. There she rediscovers herself. It is in this silent space that you stop being reactive and start being selective. You stop responding to emotional provocations, veiled demands, and requirements that previously tore you apart, because you begin to understand that your energy no longer needs to be explained. It only needs to be protected, and that, in itself, changes everything. Because before you spent hours, days, weeks trying to be understood, and now you discover that true power lies in not losing yourself in the effort to be accepted. Silence is not absence. It is complete presence. It is the space where wounds finally breathe, where the heart, once burdened by justifications, begins to beat at a new rhythm, a pace for those who no longer need to chase after anything, from those who have learned to wait for what is true, from someone who knows that what is real never needs an explanation. Perhaps as you begin to inhabit this silence, some people will distance themselves. Perhaps they will say that you have changed, that you are distant, that you have become cold, but you will know. It is not coldness. It is clarity. You are no longer accessible to emotional dynamics that imprisoned you. You are no longer available for conversations where you need to diminish yourself to be accepted. And yes, this will bother those who have always fed off your attempts to justify yourself, but that is the price of freedom. Silence demands payment, but what it delivers is non-negotiable. He restores your wholeness, the presence, peace. In that quiet place, you also begin to see who listens to you with their soul and who only heard what they wanted to hear. You begin to realize who respects you even when you say nothing, who feels you even when you withdraw, who loves you even when you no longer have the strength to explain why you need space. These people are the ones who remain, and it is in them that your soul can find rest. Silence heals because it doesn't argue, it observes, and upon observing, he reveals. It reveals who you always were before the noise, before fear, before the performance. It reveals its purest truths, its fairest boundaries, its most honest light. He teaches you to speak only when necessary. I will only respond when I am honest. To be there, without having to prove that you are worthy of being there. And most importantly, it teaches you that your presence, in itself, is a statement, a silent affirmation that you are there, whole, even when you say nothing, that your soul no longer needs to present itself as a walking apology, because you already understand. Those who need noise to see you have never seen your true essence, but whoever feels your soul in silence already loves you for what is most true in you. So now that you're beginning to experience this new state, this silence that is not emptiness but rather fullness, I want you to reflect. At what points in your life have you tried to fill this silence with explanations? How many conversations have you entered simply out of fear of being misunderstood? And most importantly, what would happen if next time you simply remained peaceful without saying anything? If this part of our conversation resonated with you, comment below. My silence is presence. Or if you want to leave your truth even more clearly documented, write, I choose the healing that resides in silence. These phrases are seeds, marks of those who are choosing not the noise of performance, but the wisdom of simply being. Perhaps now, at this point in our silent conversation, something within you is echoing in a different way. It's no longer the need to understand everything, to find answers in every sentence, to translate every sensation that passes through your chest. It's deeper, it's lighter. It's as if your soul is finally being heard, not by the words you hear, but by the permission you've given yourself to simply exist, without explaining yourself. You spent so much time trying to find your place in the eyes of others that you forgot to look at yourself with tenderness. You tried so hard to fit your voice into the silences of others that often you silenced what most needed to be said within you. I am. Without justification, without shame, without the obligation to prove that you deserve to be here. Just be. Be in your most honest, most imperfect, most whole form. This journey of ceasing to explain oneself is not about arrogance. It's not about pride. It's about spiritual dignity. It's about recognizing that your existence is not for sale, that your sensitivity is not a debt that needs to be paid with apologies, that your pain doesn't need to be converted into arguments to be validated, that your presence, even when silent, has weight, it has value, it has truth. Perhaps you've spent most of your life trying to translate feelings you didn't even know how to name, trying to put into words emotions that came from a place others never accessed. And when they couldn't understand you, you thought the problem was yours. You withdrew. You tried to be clearer, lighter, more understandable. And in that attempt, you lost your spontaneity, your sparkle, the flame that made you, you. But now, you begin to remember, and the memory comes like a breeze, not a storm. It doesn't invade, it invites. A subtle invitation to return to your essence, to stop trying to fit into molds that only diminish you, to stop dressing in the clothes that the expectations of others have placed upon your soul. Because behind every explanation you gave, there was a silent plea, let me be. And perhaps today you understand that this request no longer needs to be made to others. It only needs to be accepted by yourself. You are no longer begging to be seen. You are seeing yourself. And that gaze, that reunion, that presence with yourself is sacred. It is the beginning of everything you have always sought outside. It is the root of your healing. It is the safe ground where your soul can finally rest. And when that happens, something changes. It's not that others suddenly start to understand you better. It's that you stop needing to, because you understand that it's not your role to translate your essence to those who don't want to or can't feel it. Your mission isn't to convince anyone. It's to be so true that the simple fact of your existence already provokes transformations, even in silence, even in absence, even without explanations. You realize that the value of your story isn't in how much it's understood, it's in how authentically it's lived. You realize that some people will lose you because they weren't ready for your freedom, and that's okay. Losing is part of the healing process, but what you can never lose again is yourself. Not after having rediscovered yourself in this space where the soul finally breathes without fear. Perhaps now you are ready to take that final step. Not an end, but the beginning of a new cycle. A cycle where you stop begging for space and start occupying it with presence. Where you no longer need to plead for a listening ear, because you chose to listen to yourself first. Where you stop chasing justifications and start walking alongside your truth. This is the point in the journey where silence becomes poetry. Where posture becomes prayer, where your no carries blessings, where your absence also communicates self-love, where your solitude becomes a source of wisdom. And it is at this point that you stop trying to be explained and begin to be felt, not by everyone, but by the right ones, by those who see with the eyes of the soul, by those who recognize the sacred that exists in those who no longer need to translate themselves. And if all of this made sense to you, if this journey so far touched some forgotten part of your being, if it reminded you of something you already knew but had forgotten, write it down. Write it here in the comments. I free myself from the need to be explained. I am. Or if you prefer something more intimate, more straight from your soul, write, my presence is my answer. These words are not just words. They are declarations. They are mirrors. They are the silent steps of a soul that has decided not to be silent anymore to please others, that has decided not to bend anymore to be accepted, that has decided not to diminish itself anymore to fit in. And if you know someone who is still trying to explain themselves in order to be loved, share this video with that person, but not as advice, as a hug. Because sometimes, what the soul needs most is to know that it is not alone in this search for inner freedom. If you've made it this far to the end of this video, it wasn't by chance. Your soul brought you here. And if she stayed, it's because she found an echo, a mirror, shelter. So listen with your heart. Subscribe on the channel right now, because here every word is a seed, every silence is a sanctuary, and each video is an invitation to reconnect with who you've always been, before the world teaches you how to hide. If this journey touched some forgotten part of you, leave your like, not for me, but as a way of saying to your soul, I heard, I felt, I choose to continue. And now, let me extend one final invitation to you. The next video is already playing on the screen. Click on it. Stay with me, because the soul's journey is only just beginning.